Evening folks, hi, welcome back to Vinci's Workbench. Tonight I bring for your attention a few little projects that I've got in the works and a few other little projects and a couple of sneaky peeks as well. So first little sneaky peek are the new products from Masterclass Custom Guns, one of which is this really well made carbon fibre tube for obviously a 12 gauge shotgun. It does have a compatible nut from Masterclass Custom Guns that is available for Benellis, Winchesters, Mossbergs, Berettas, if you're really that badly inclined. And they are also available in different capacities. Very, very strong. The other little project that I've been working on, which is something that is come to fruition now, is my project that you see here in front of me. Now, if any of you guys have got a straight pull 223 out there, obviously you have to keep charging each time. It's not really that much fun. Yes, I do have a Smith & Wesson 1522, but this little box of bits will help you to change your straight pull AR-15 into a 22 semi-auto. Now, this started life as a CMMG conversion. Obviously you have the bullet on the end there, obviously where the round goes into, and by all accounts it does really well, but you cannot make this work for competition level shooting. So if you're lucky enough to, like me, have a straight pull 223, you may want to be able to practice with it in a 22 configuration, and instead of having to keep charging each time, it actually cycles. Or if you actually want to use your 223 in a mini rifle competition, this little get-up, as far as I'm concerned, will make your rifle exceedingly competitive. There are a few manufacturers out there that do make dedicated 22 uppers. No point in investing when you've already got a 1522. They're great, reliable guns. They just work flawlessly. But every now and then, I would just like to use something that feels like a proper AR and a little bit plastic fantastic. So, with no further ado, I'll introduce you to the CMMG conversion kit. Now, as you see here, it is actually broken down into its elements. So, the CMMG bolt conversion is a really reliable little kit to obviously use as practice, but you wouldn't really want to use this in mini rifle. The big faults that this unit has is that, obviously, yes, it works reliably and it charges reliably and it chambers, but there was 3 problems I've found with it. One, obviously being a conversion, it flapped around a little bit too much in the firearm, as in the overall length had a little bit of play in the actual firing mechanism. Also, as the bolt went back and forward, it would actually bounce. So it gets to its firing position, bounces back again, and then goes back into battery. So you were finding that sometimes you could get a out of battery, very rare occasion. I've had one guy who had an out of battery detonation and managed to get the whole bullet stuck inside this end piece here, or if you obviously that's the worst case scenario, or the worst case is that obviously you get failure to a feed or failure to eject. In fact, the last video I put up of me shooting at an NRA mini rifle competition, I was using this assembly in my full bore rifle. Now, so what have I done to improve this action? So if you take into account that a dedicated 22 upper can be anywhere between £400 to £1,000, and a whole 22 rifle can be anywhere. I think some of the competitive ones are going for about 2,500 or just shy of £2,000. This whole kit up here was just shy of about £500. So one of the first modifications I've done is this firing pin. This is not a standard CMMG firing pin. This was made by M9 Engineering, and this is titanium, making it a little bit stronger, making it a bit more reliable. It's also a couple of thou longer actually on the firing pin itself to obviously make sure that you guarantee detonation. On the actual bolt face itself with the fake bullet, the only thing I've done there is obviously polish the actual chamber itself, just to help the extraction of the round once it's spent, and obviously polish this up. And this is a slightly longer extension on the brass bush, so when it's in the chamber, the blast doesn't come back into the upper so much, which obviously mucks things up for when you want to use it as full bore. The other piece that I've upgraded, these 2 pieces are standard. The extractor itself is actually a upgraded one with this piece here. Now this is where things get a little bit more interesting. This piece here is called a Borebuddy, and Borebuddy do a lot of different pieces to help improve this particular kit as an overall, making it more enjoyable. What you have here is a tunable weight that goes between different weights. I don't know the technicalities. And inside, you can hear there are bigger weights and smaller weights. You get 3 sets. You get 2 large aluminium, 2 small aluminium, the same in tungsten and the same in steel. Now, with a bit of experimenting, I've now found that the 2 large tungsten and the 2 small steel are the most reliable for the circulating or the cyclic rate of this conversion kit. The Borebuddy itself slips quite nice and neatly underneath the bolt itself. Doesn't doesn't invade the rest of it. Just adds a bit more weight onto the cycling of the action, slowing things down, which eliminates that bolt bounce, so it doesn't mean you get failure to eject and failure to feed. That is a great little addition. That's a good start. Inside the extractor, I've put a Borebuddy extra strong 150%, wherever it was, spring, so obviously then you're guaranteed extraction. The spring itself is just a standard CMMG spring. It does work exceedingly well. I found that after about 1,000 to 2,000 rounds, the spring starts to bend up, and I think that's probably my own fault from where obviously I'm trying to put the unit back together. The spring itself you see here, which is the firing pin spring, this is an uprated stronger spring that goes round the firing pin. So if you've got a stronger spring and you've got a longer firing pin, this also helps obviously for guaranteed detonation. But both of which slip straight into the bolt, causing no concerns whatsoever. You just hold it down and pop the split pin in. Boom. So it looks absolutely standard. You've got a slightly longer firing pin, which obviously guarantees detonation. With a stronger spring, it just helps things to be a little bit more efficient. Now, this little piece here is a buffer pad, again from Borebuddy. All of these other extra elements are from Borebuddy, and this just sits nicely at the end, because also you have a little bit more weight and you have a little bit more oomph behind it. This means that obviously it doesn't smash against the back of the welding and obviously split the unit in half. Right, so now that the actual item is clean itself, I will show you how to put all this back together, because this can be a real pain in the butt to put together. But once it's together, really, really enjoyable. So, as I've already shown you, the extractor's already in. I've put the firing pin in. I always just make sure that this little split pin is obviously just horizontal as best as you can get it. That's how it came out the packet. That's how I return it each time. All you do now is apply a little bit of oil onto the surfaces of the action bars, or rails, whatever you want to call them. And this is where the faffing starts. You've got to try and get the weight itself. Oh, as for the actual tuning of this, went on a few forums in America and a few in the UK, and the most popular consensus for running this reliably with CCI Minimag, for example, is 2 large tungsten and 2 small steel weights. The only thing you've got to be obviously careful is just make sure that this is obviously nipped up. So I'll do that right now. So what you do, nice generous bit of oil on the actual bolt itself. There's a nice little detent on the underside of the bolt, and obviously this marries up quite nicely. Lift it up, place it in, and it locks in nice and tight. So what I do is I lay the weight actually on the actual action bars or the rails themselves, squeeze it apart, which then allows you to bring the bolt into the assembly. Everything goes a little bit tight, lift that under, and that clips under place. So that is how I get the weight on. I'm sure there's a better way, but that is now in and ready for the spring and the rest of the assembly. So then we have the buffer pad. The buffer pad itself sits quite nicely there. Bring the bolt back a little ways to about there, and then we get the end of the spring in the back of the actual bolt carrier group. Now we've got to try and get the rod in I hold that a bit tight, get the actual buffer pad in the correct orientation, get the bolt back in. Once you've got it in the right place, it should just go ping. There we go. We do a bit more pressure there, and that is now the bolt and the weight back in on the action bars or the rails. Then once you've obviously got the weight and everything back in place, you then allow a little bit of room to swing the chamber in, and that is the whole entire bolt back together. So we have the firing pin is in, the weight is now inserted and it will not move and it won't fall out, and obviously will reciprocate with the whole bolt carrier group itself. Obviously you have a buffer pad at the back, and that is the CMMG bolt conversion put back in, and everything's now a little bit more upgraded, a little bit cleaner, a little bit oiled, and ready to be put back in the upper. I'll just put a tiny little bit more oil on to make sure it's working. You can never have enough oil, like you can never have enough ammunition. Now obviously the trick with this is obviously this does come apart and is held on with 3 2.5mm Allen keys. Being a standard AR-15 upper, like usual, you put it in, you find the keyway, put it in, find the keyway, and the charging handle goes in. Obviously at this time, this can be a bit of a pain in the neck because obviously there's nothing holding it in place, but you bring it back about 2 inches, which then allows you to pop the conversion kit in. There you go, all bolts up nice and tightly. I generally just give it a little pull, just to make sure everything's working. But again, like I was showing you, the reason I wanted to show you this is obviously if you have a problem with the rifle, and obviously the rifle is reciprocating, inside the charging handle there is no way for that 22 to go up inside now, because you have such a greater surface area on the extractor and the firing pin. You're guaranteed for nothing to go up inside, and it also stops all the blast from making the chamber itself nice and dirty. So what we then do is we then put on our charging handle. So with the full assembly all back together again, it basically sits in something like this. So every time you charge the handle, it then allows you to charge the next round. Obviously I'm holding this at the back because obviously there would be the return spring holding it in. Just means it's a bit easier to chamber around on a option 2 start. The other thing I had done as well recently to lighten things up is obviously I had the barrel machined down and lightened up and carbon fibre wrapped by Masterclass Custom Guns. It hasn't lost any accuracy whatsoever because I take this Trichicon MRO off, and I also put on obviously a longer distance scope. I can't remember which one I used, Delta Titanium, and I can use this out to 600 yards quite happily. Okay, so then in the lower, obviously as you can see here, I've got my Timney trigger, and I've got the better mag conversion or boonie mag conversion. What you also notice with this little device here that gives you the last round hold open, I was finding that it wouldn't always work reliably with every single Smith & Wesson mag that I had in my possession. Take into account I've got about 60 of them. Obviously Smith & Wesson mags, they die on these feed lips. Absolutely awful. Great magazine, but the most expensive consumable that I could ever think of. This wouldn't always work, so I just took some 1000 grit and just polished the living daylights out of it, and now it's working a lot more reliably. Just scrape some of this crap off around here. This little piece here, that will eventually come loose, but I don't know quite whether that's going to do any damage coming off, but it just stays on there. Doesn't seem to cause me any problems, so I'll just leave that on till it falls off. Now the upside with this is obviously if I pull the magazine release, this will go down through the actual rifle. I had to do a little bit of filing on each side just to get it to obviously mate into the Southern Gun Company lower, but once it's in, flaps around and works reliably with all of the Smith & Wesson mags. Right then folks, that is basically how you make your straight pull AR-15 a much better little mini rifle and more enjoyable to shoot in a semi-auto configuration. Let me put the upper and the lower back together, and obviously I will then be able to show you some of the reasons why I went with what I was thinking. So as you see it here, this is the rifle put back together. It looks a little bit, aesthetically it's more pleasing because obviously you don't have this whopping great gap at the back, but that's the tuned weight, and obviously that's the upgraded bolt assembly with the Hera arm charging handle. It means that I can now have that piece, put the paddle, and I have last round hold open. Obviously I can leave this bolt back if I wish in an option 3 start. I can use the paddle, obviously charge from the side handle. But the other reason I went with the Hera charging handle is when the rifle is down, it does leave a gap for you to obviously then obtain it from the table, because obviously you'd have it in this configuration, you'd have the magazine in loaded, chamber would be empty. Just creates a little void to be able to put your hand around, and your safety obviously would be off. Anyway folks, this is my little project that I've put together. I've just makes my straight pull a little bit more enjoyable in a 22 configuration, makes it more reliable, stops the bolt bounce, tightens things up inside, increases the accuracy, and obviously the lowers the amount of failure to feed and failure to eject that you obviously would enjoy with a standard CMMG. And it means I can also couple it up with the side charging, which just again makes it a little bit reliable. I'm used to this platform with a side charger in a full bore configuration, so why not enjoy it in a 22? Again, the firing pin itself is available from M1 Engineering. I can't remember the cost on them, but they are just amazing little bits of kits. The actual Borebuddies themselves are available from Black Rifle. They're a good bunch of lads and they bring in some good stuff. Hera Arms cocking handle, I can't remember where the heck I got that from, just Google it, it'll pop up. There are some places in the UK. But it now means I can enjoy a metal rifle instead of being plastic. It makes it a little bit more realistic, makes it a bit more enjoyable, and I've put a lot of money into this rifle, so why not enjoy it in 2 different calibers? Anyway guys, you take care and we'll see you on the range.